I remember the first time I truly questioned the meaning of my life. I was sitting alone under an old oak tree in the park, the late afternoon sun spilling golden light across the fallen leaves. Everything felt ordinary, yet beneath that ordinary rhythm of life, there was a quiet, persistent question gnawing at me. Why am I here? I had accomplished small things, achieved milestones, smiled with friends, and endured heartache, but none of it seemed to answer that deep, lingering question. As I sat there, I noticed an old monk walking slowly along the path. His presence felt different, not commanding, not distracting, but simply aware. I watched him pause by a small pond, his eyes tracing the ripples in the water. There was something in the way he carried himself that made the world around him seem lighter, calmer, yet filled with a profound depth. Curious and inexplicably drawn to him, I approached and asked, "Sir, how do you find peace in life?" Smiled, not with an answer ready-made, but with a softness that made the question itself feel sacred. Peace, he said gently, is not something to be found outside yourself. It is something that unfolds when you see the truth of what life. It's its purpose, its suffering, and its impermanence. At that moment, I realized that I had been searching in all the wrong places, chasing achievements, distractions, and fleeting joys, while the answers had been quietly waiting within. If only I had the courage to notice. Over the following days, I spent hours observing the world around me in silence, letting the rush of thoughts slow down. I watched people laugh, quarrel, and simply exist. I noticed how each life seemed to carry its own weight of joy and sorrow, of hope and fear. And slowly, I began to understand what the monk had hinted at, that life's purpose is not a single, grand answer handed to us like a treasure, but a path we walk moment by moment, guided by awareness, compassion, and understanding. I want to take you on this journey with me, a journey through the stories and wisdom of Zen, through the quiet lessons hidden in the small moments of life. Together, we will explore the nature of suffering, the meaning of existence, and perhaps, if we are patient and attentive, we will catch glimpses of life's true purpose, not as a distant destination, but as something alive, breathing, and unfolding in every instant. And maybe, just maybe, by the end of this journey, we will see the world a little differently, and perhaps even ourselves a little more clearly. I remember the morning I first encountered the old temple at the edge of the village. It was hidden behind thick bamboo groves, almost as if it didn't want to be found, and a thin mist hung low, softening the edges of the ancient stone steps. I had heard stories of this place from the villagers' tales of monks who lived in silence, of wisdom hidden in the quiet corners of their minds. But I never imagined I would find myself standing there, heart pounding, feeling both curious and strangely apprehensive. A narrow path led me to a small wooden door, weathered and worn, yet radiating a sense of calm that seemed to pull me forward. I hesitated, unsure if it was polite to simply enter. But before I could decide, the door creaked open, and a monk appeared. He was not old in the way we usually think of age, but he carried a quiet weight of time in his eyes, as though he had seen more than anyone could imagine. "Come," he said softly, without looking at me directly. "The morning is fleeting, and the mind often escapes us." Inside, the temple was sparse. A few cushions lay neatly in a row, and the faint glow of early sunlight filtered through paper windows. I followed the monk to the central hall, where a small bell hung. He gestured toward it. "Before anything else," he said, "we listen. Listen deeply, not to the sound, but to the silence that follows." Hesitant, I struck the bell. Its tone was clear, lingering, vibrating in the air long after my hand had moved away. And then, silence, the kind of silence that feels alive, as if the world itself is holding its breath. The monk watched me for a moment. Most of life is spent reacting, chasing what we desire, avoiding what we fear. We rarely pause to simply be. But to find the purpose of life, one must first see clearly what it is we cling to. I frowned, not fully understanding, so he told me a story. Once, he began, there was a young man who believed that happiness was somewhere far away. He traveled across mountains, crossed rivers, and walked through dense forests, seeking treasures, wisdom, and joy. Every time he thought he had found it, it slipped through his fingers. One day, exhausted, he sat by a riverbank, staring at the reflection of the clouds in the water. And for the first time, he noticed his own face in the stream, not as an image, but as a presence. In that moment, he realized that all his seeking had been outside, when the truth he longed for had been within him all along. I felt a strange resonance in his words, as if the story was not just about the young man, but about me. How often had I wandered through life, hoping that some distant goal, some future achievement, or someone else's approval would finally make me feel whole. How often had I ignored the quiet presence within me, thinking it too small, too simple to hold the answers I sought. The monk continued, life is like this river. We are the water, constantly moving, flowing, sometimes turbulent, sometimes calm. To know your purpose, you must watch the flow, not struggle against it. To know life's truth, you must pause long enough to see what is already here." He motioned toward the window, where sunlight now pierced the mist, illuminating dust particles that danced like tiny stars. "Every moment contains the universe, if only we have eyes to see it." I sat there, trying to quiet my racing thoughts. Slowly, I felt a sense of clarity creeping in, delicate and gentle. I realized that purpose is not a distant destination to be reached, but a way of moving through each moment with awareness. Each breath, each step, each choice carries its own lesson, its own meaning. The young man in the story had walked far, yet the journey's end was never a place, was a presence, a way of being awake in life. When I finally stood to leave, the monk gave me one last instruction: "Carry this with you not as a burden, but as a lantern. Walk lightly, observe deeply, and remember, the river is yours to flow, but do not be lost in its currents." I stepped back into the bamboo grove, the mist now thinning, feeling as if I had been quietly initiated into a secret that was both terrifying and beautiful. That morning, I began to understand that the search for meaning was not about finding something new, but about uncovering what had been there all along. A few days after my first visit to the temple, I found myself walking along a narrow mountain trail, the air crisp and filled with a scent of pine. I had come seeking clarity about something that had been troubling me, deeply suffering, kind that gnaws at the heart and mind, the subtle ache that lingers even when everything seems fine. I wanted to understand why it existed, why life seemed to carry it for all of us, and how people could possibly live fully despite it. As I reached a small clearing, I noticed a monk sitting cross-legged on a flat rock, eyes closed, yet his presence somehow commanded the world to pause. I approached him and asked, "Why does suffering exist? Why can't life just be peaceful?" He opened his eyes slowly, and in that quiet gaze, I felt an unspoken understanding. "Suffering is not your enemy," he said gently. "It is your teacher if you have the courage to learn from it." I frowned, uncertain how pain could be considered a teacher. Seeing my hesitation, he began a story. There was once a farmer who lived at the edge of a vast valley. One year, his only horse ran away. Neighbors came to console him, saying, "What misfortune?" But the farmer simply replied, "Perhaps." A few days later, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 wild horses from the mountains. The neighbors exclaimed, "How fortunate!" And the farmer again said, "Perhaps." Later, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses, fell, and broke his leg. Such terrible luck. The neighbors cried, and again the farmer said, "Perhaps." Not long after, a war came to the valley. and every able-bodied young man was conscripted, except the farmer's son because of his injury. The neighbors realized that what seemed like misfortune was, in truth, neither good nor bad. It simply was, and life's true nature was beyond immediate judgment. I listened intently, feeling the weight of the story settle over me. It was as if the monk was not merely teaching about suffering, but was showing me a lens through which to perceive it differently. Suffering is not an enemy to defeat, nor is it a punishment. It is an intrinsic part of life, woven into every joy and sorrow, every loss and gain. To resist it completely is to resist existence itself. The challenge, I began to understand, is not in avoiding suffering, but in seeing it clearly, without judgment, and learning its subtle lessons. Over the next few hours, I walked along the trail, letting his words sink in. I thought about moments in my own life, heartbreak, disappointment, moments when I felt the world was collapsing around me. I had fought against those moments, cursed them, tried to escape them, and yet they had shaped me, refined me, and taught me truths I might never have learned otherwise. The monk's presence had reminded me that suffering is a mirror. It reflects our attachments, our desires, and our resistance to the impermanent nature of life. Later, as the sun began to dip behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the path, the monk spoke again. To live fully, you must embrace the flow of life, even when it carries sorrow. Do not fear suffering. Do not deny it. Do not cling to joy alone. Each moment of pain is a doorway, and each doorway opens to understanding. If you are willing to pass through it. I nodded, feeling a deep resonance in my chest, a quiet shift in perception. For the first time, I realized that suffering was not a burden to bear, but a path to awakening, a companion on the journey toward clarity and peace. When I returned to the village that evening, I noticed the ordinary things around me differently, the way the wind moved through the trees, the laughter of children playing, the soft murmur of the river. Nothing had changed outwardly, yet everything had changed within me. I carried with me a quiet sense of acceptance, a recognition that life's difficulties were not interruptions, but essential threads in the fabric of being. That day, I began to see that peace is not the absence of suffering, but the presence of understanding, way to hold life fully, with all its fleeting joys and inevitable sorrows. One evening, I found myself sitting alone by the river that cut through the village, watching the water swirl around rocks and drift downstream. The sky was painted in shades of orange and violet, and a soft breeze carried the distant scent of jasmine. I had been thinking about the monk's teachings, the purpose of life, the nature of suffering, and yet a new question had begun to take shape in my mind. What is the meaning of my existence? Not just life in general, but mine specifically. Why am I here, in this body, in this place, at this particular time? As I sat there, a gentle voice called my name. I looked up and saw the monk walking toward me along the riverbank, his footsteps silent on the soft earth. He sat down beside me without speaking, simply allowing the sound of the river to fill the space between us. After a few moments, he spoke. Most people spend their lives searching for meaning in things far away or in achievements yet to come. They think meaning is something to be captured, like a butterfly to be pinned in a book. But existence is not a puzzle to solve or a prize. To init is a mystery to experience. I listened, intrigued, but still uncertain. But how, I asked, do I know what I am meant to do? How do I know why I exist? The monk looked at me and smiled, a smile that seemed to hold centuries of understanding. Existence does not give instructions. It does not hand out manuals. Meaning arises not from what you do, but from how you are present in what you do. Every action, every thought, every breath is a chance to participate in life fully, to reflect awareness and compassion, to touch something beyond yourself. He told me a story, one that stayed with me long after the sun had disappeared below the horizon. There was a young woman who spent her life searching for purpose. She studied, traveled, and achieved many things, but always felt a void. One day, she helped a stranger who had lost his way. She guided him home, and in that small act, she felt a fullness she had never known. She realized then that existence is not measured by grand accomplishments, but by the depth of presence, the care offered, and the awareness held in each fleeting moment. I reflected on the story, thinking of the times I had been so focused on my own plans, my own desires, that I had failed to notice small opportunities to be truly present. Moments when someone needed a kind word, a helping hand, or simply a listening ear had passed by, unnoticed, and yet these small acts were the essence of life's meaning. The monk's words slowly settled into my mind. To exist fully is to engage deeply with what is here, now. We sat in silence for a while, the river flowing endlessly beside us, each ripple a reminder of the impermanence of everything. He then said, "Do not mistake meaning for complexity. The simplest moments often carry the greatest truth. A smile, a shared meal, the quiet attention given to a friend, these are not small things. They are the threads that weave life into something that matters, something alive. To exist is not just to breathe or to think, it is to touch the world with awareness and care. I began to see that my earlier restlessness, my constant questioning, was a kind of seeking that could never be satisfied by external achievements alone. The meaning of my existence was not hidden in distant places or in lofty goals. It was embedded in the act of living itself, moment by moment, choice by choice. And suddenly, it felt as if the river, the wind, the fading light, and even the small presence of the monk beside me were all teaching the same lesson: that life is not a problem to solve, but an experience to be fully embraced. As darkness fell, and the first stars appeared in the sky, I felt a gentle clarity settle over me. The search for meaning was no longer a frantic quest. It was a quiet unfolding, a recognition that my existence was alive in every breath I took, in every thought I held, and in every small act of presence I offered to the world. That night, I walked back to the village with a sense of lightness, carrying within me the understanding that the meaning of life is not somewhere ahead, but here in the delicate balance of being aware, compassionate, and fully alive in each passing moment. As I walked back from the river that evening, I kept replaying the stories the monk had shared with me: the farmer with his unpredictable fortunes, the young man searching for happiness, the woman discovering meaning in a small act of kindness. Each story had a simple surface, yet beneath that simplicity lay a depth I could feel but could not fully grasp at first. Sitting quietly in my room later that night, I began to notice a pattern, a thread that connected them all: awareness, awareness. Not as a concept to study, but as a living experience. Each story revealed that life unfolds in ways beyond our control. And yet, in every moment, we have the opportunity to meet it fully. The farmer did not resist the twists of fate. He observed them. The young man paused and saw the truth within himself. The woman acted with presence and compassion. Each had touched life directly, without clinging, without distraction. And in that touch, they discovered wisdom. I realized that the purpose of life is not something to achieve or grasp, as I had long believed. It is something to awaken to. It is the awareness of each breath, each step, each thought, each encounter. It is the quiet recognition that our lives are threads in a larger tapestry, and that by being present, we contribute to the harmony of the whole. Purpose is not a destination at the end of a road. It is the way we walk that road. The monk's lessons had slowly opened my eyes to this truth, that to live fully is to live consciously, with an openness to the lessons hidden in every experience. And suffering, I realized, is inseparable from this awakening. For so long, I had resisted it, fought against it, wished it away. Yet the farmer's story, the monk's words, showed me that suffering is not a curse, but a teacher. It is the mirror that reflects our attachments, our fears, our illusions about control. When we face suffering without denial or resistance, we see the world more clearly. We learn to let go, to accept impermanence, to cherish moments of joy while they last. Suffering becomes a companion, not an enemy, a guide that teaches patience, resilience, and clarity. The meaning of existence, then, is inseparable from purpose and suffering. I thought back to the woman who found fulfillment in helping another. I thought about my own moments of quiet attention and care. Meaning is not something we stumble upon. It is cultivated in the way we engage with life. It emerges when we act with awareness, when we honor the present, when we recognize that every small choice ripples outward into the world. Each breath, each action, each thought carries weight, if only we notice it. I began to practice this awareness in small ways. While walking through the village streets, I paid attention to the sound of my footsteps, the laughter of children, the aroma of food from open windows. While speaking with friends, I listened fully, without preparing my next sentence or drifting into distraction. While alone, I observed my own mind, noting the waves of desire, fear, and longing that arose, and letting them pass without clinging. Each moment became a lesson, each day a practice, each encounter an opportunity to touch life deeply, slowly. A sense of peace began to grow within me, not the fleeting relief of a wish fulfilled, but the steady calm of knowing I could meet life as it was without resistance. The monk's stories had revealed a way of being that I could carry with me, a method for navigating the uncertainties and challenges of life. Life was not about escaping difficulty or attaining some final state of happiness. It was about walking with awareness, embracing impermanence, welcoming suffering as a teacher, and discovering meaning in every act of presence and compassion. As I sat by my window that night, looking out at the moonlight, reflecting on the river, I felt a profound gratitude. The answers I had sought were not hidden in some distant place. They had been unfolding around me all along, in the simplest moments, in the quiet of the mind, in the act of noticing. Zen wisdom had taught me that life's mysteries are not solved through frantic searching, but through gentle awareness, mindful presence, and the courage to meet each moment fully. In that realization, I felt the first true stirrings of understanding, as if the threads of purpose, suffering, and meaning were weaving together into a tapestry. I could now begin to see with clarity. After weeks of walking the path of awareness, I began to notice subtle shifts in the way I experienced life. The lessons I had learned from the monk and the stories he shared were no longer abstract ideas. They were living practices that could be woven into the fabric of every day. I realized that Zen is not something to study from books alone, nor is it a destination to reach in the distant future. It is found in the simple, ordinary moments. If we choose to be fully present and attentive. The first thing I started practicing was mindful breathing. Each morning, I would sit quietly, paying attention to the rise and fall of my chest, the flow of air in and out of my body. At first, my mind raced, thoughts scattering like leaves in the wind. But gradually, with patience, I learned to return my attention gently over and over to the breath. In those moments, I felt a quiet clarity begin to grow, a stillness that allowed me to observe life without being swept away by it. I discovered that just a few minutes of mindful breathing could transform my entire day, grounding me in the present, calming my restless thoughts, and giving me space to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. I also began to observe my daily actions with awareness. Washing dishes, walking through the streets, speaking with friends, all these ordinary activities became opportunities for practice. When I washed dishes, I noticed the warm water, the texture of the soap, the movement of my hands. I stopped rushing and instead allowed myself to fully inhabit the task. When I walked, I paid attention to each step, the sound of my feet on the earth, the subtle sway of my body, the rhythm of the wind against my skin. Even mundane activities revealed a hidden richness when performed with full presence. Compassion became another practical application. The monks' stories had shown me that meaning often arises not from grand gestures, but from small, mindful acts of kindness. I began to look for ways to offer simple help or attention to others, listening fully when a friend spoke, offering a smile to a stranger, or helping someone carry a heavy load. These small acts, repeated over time, created ripples of connection, reminding me that our lives are intertwined and that every choice carries significance. In practicing compassion, I found that my own heart felt lighter and more open, and I could face challenges with greater resilience. I also learned to embrace suffering as part of life. Instead of pushing away discomfort or frustration, I began to observe it, to notice the thoughts and feelings that arose, and to let them pass without clinging or resistance. Painful moments became teachers, revealing attachments I had not realized I held, showing me where I sought control or feared loss. This practice did not eliminate suffering, but it transformed my relationship with it. I began to see difficulty as a companion that guided me toward patience, understanding, and growth. Each challenge became an invitation to awaken rather than a burden to escape. Finally, I incorporated reflection into my daily routine. Each evening, I would spend a few minutes quietly reviewing the day, not to judge or criticize, but to notice where I had been present, where I had acted with awareness, and where I had drifted into distraction. This simple reflection helped me to learn from my actions, to notice patterns of thought and behavior, and to cultivate a deeper understanding of myself. Over time, I realized that life itself was a continuous teacher, and that by observing, practicing, and reflecting, I could gradually move toward a more mindful and meaningful existence. Through these practices, I discovered that Zen is not an escape from the world, nor a prescription for perfection. It is a way of living that allows us to meet life fully, moment by moment, with clarity, compassion, and awareness. Each breath, each action, each thought becomes an opportunity to awaken, to touch the essence of existence, and to discover the hidden purpose woven into the ordinary flow of life. The teachings I had received from the monk, once abstract and mysterious, had transformed into practical tools I could carry with me wherever I went. In applying them, I found a quiet strength, a deep serenity, and a sense of alignment with the rhythm of life that had previously eluded me. As I sit quietly now, reflecting on all that I have experienced, I realize that life's mysteries are not puzzles to solve, but invitations to awaken. The lessons of purpose, suffering, and meaning are not distant truths waiting to be discovered. They are alive in every breath, every glance, every interaction. The monk's stories, once distant tales, have become mirrors in which I see myself more clearly, and in that reflection, I find both guidance and freedom. I invite you to pause for a moment, to breathe deeply, and to feel the weight and wonder of your own existence. Notice the rhythm of your breath, the rise and fall of your chest, the quiet pulse of life that carries you through each day. Let go of judgment and the need to have all the answers. Simply be present, allowing yourself to inhabit this moment fully. In this awareness, you may begin to sense the gentle flow of life that connects you to everything around you: the river, the trees, the wind, the people you meet, and even the stillness within yourself. Think of the small, ordinary actions in your day, the smile you offer, the attention you give, the kindness you extend. Each one, when performed with awareness, becomes a thread in the tapestry of life, a reflection of your participation in the world. And when challenges arise, as they inevitably will, remember that suffering is not a punishment, but a teacher. Observe it without clinging, without resistance, and allow it to reveal the patterns, attachments, and illusions that shape your experience. In embracing both joy and difficulty, with clarity and compassion. You touch the essence of existence itself. I invite you now to close your eyes, if you can, and imagine a gentle light within you, a calm, steady presence that exists beyond thought, beyond desire, beyond fear. This light is the awareness that has always been with you, quietly witnessing every moment. As you breathe in, feel it expand. As you breathe out, feel it touch the world around you. Allow yourself to rest in this simple, profound truth that life is not about arriving somewhere, but about moving through each moment with presence. Compassion and understanding carry this meditation with you into the day ahead. Let it guide your actions, your thoughts, your interactions. Remember that purpose, suffering, and meaning are not distant goals. They are alive, here and now, waiting for your attention, your care, your awareness. The peace, clarity, and understanding that has always been within you, simply waiting to be recognized.